Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation today. I'm going to be talking about Spanish language teachers' mediation practices in higher education. Let me introduce myself. My name is Isabel Cobo Palacios, and even though I would love to see you face to face and have this conversation about my research, we need to adapt our presentation to online conferences with the current circumstances. Here you can have a look at my photo, this is me. My appearance matches my Spanish accent, which hopefully you would have guessed from the start of this presentation. I am Spanish myself. I'm a Spanish language teacher in Warwick University and Coventry University, and I am also a PhD student on my third year at the Open University. I'm here today as part of the online International Doctoral Research Conference in Education, and I will start my presentation with an overview of the project that I belong to. You can see right at the bottom the icon of the project, and next to it my PhD home university, which will be the next slide after the project overview. Let's get started. I joined this project in 2017, even though it started a year earlier, and I immediately fell in love with their name. World Making and Language Acts. Their aim is to demonstrate the importance of language research in the UK. It's based in King's College London, and it has 3 other universities collaborating: Queen Mary, University of Westminster, and the OU. We have 6 strands in the project, and number 5, diasporic identities and the politics of language teaching, is the one that I am part of. They were looking for a PhD student who was interested in teaching languages and mediating cultures. When I saw this advert 3 years ago, I thought, wow, this is too good to be true, I need to go for it, and I got it. That's when my PhD journey started. I've already told you about the first part of my title, Spanish language teacher. This is myself. I am an insider researcher working in higher education. But what about the key term on mediation practices? Let's start with that. Are you a mediator? What is mediation? Well, mediation is a key aspect of my research, and I'd very much like to know what you think about this term. Would you say it's a skill? Is it a process? An arrangement? Something that you perform, you act, an activity? A vehicle for something else? Or is it a tool? Well, literature has used all these terms to define what mediation is. Mediation can be more than a skill, according to Zarate. It can be an activity, a complex activity, as Rothler said almost 10 years ago. It can be a process, but not simply a process, a transformational process. And more recently, it's been defined as an act to create bridges. My definition of mediation takes into consideration all the literature I've read, and here you have it. For me, mediation it is an active process. As you can see here, it is a process that bridges 2 or more different cultures and languages. Nowadays, in our classrooms, we don't have just one culture and one language. Our students are coming from all around the world. So yes, mediation, it's about connecting all these different cultures and languages and using different strategies to help interpreting this journey that we take our students on from a known to an unknown world. In my case, I'm taking them from their worlds to the Hispanic world as I teach Spanish in a meaningful, otherwise it would not be an effective learning, unique. I have my unique experiences, my unique background, and they do as their students as well, in a personal way. Please feel free to add your comments or idea about this term below in the comment section, to give your definitions, whether you have heard about this term before or you haven't. And I'll show you now what the literature said. Well, there are some gaps in the mediation according to literature. Stathopoulos stated that it is rather a neglected area in foreign language education. You might have heard mediation in terms of problem solving or conflict resolution. We don't have to have a problem to mediate. Mediate is actually one of the activity that teachers do mostly in class. Mediation, according to Kohler, my second quote in this slide, needs to be more investigated, especially in the context of intercultural language teaching and learning. What about the concept of mediation in education, in language education? It starts with Vygotsky. Vygotsky thought that mediation was an activity that individuals do, whether mental, social, or material, and it was always shaped by tools, by cultural tools and signs. Later on, the intercultural communicative competence lens gave mediation a very important role, taking into account all languages and cultures in the space of the classroom. Mediation has recently been taking an approach in the Common European Framework for References, which it's the body that we have in Europe to recognize what level you have from a language. Are you an A1, A2, B1, B2, how expert you are in a language. The 4 skills that are traditionally considered in language education were reading, speaking, writing, and listening, and they have been moved into reception, interpretation, production, and mediation. So I don't know how aware you were about this, but mediation, it's a very timely topic nowadays. The CFR focus a bit more on learners and assessment, and my focus is mainly on teachers, on how do teachers mediate in the classroom. If teachers do it, the students can do it. Finally, mediation versus translation is not completely different, but there has been a lot on translation as a way of mediating, as a pedagogic translation. My focus, my research goes beyond from this translation. It's about acting, creating, interpreting, bringing together all these languages and cultures from the students and the teacher to create this new identity in the classroom. Let's have a look at the theoretical framework that I have created based on the literature. Well, here we have lots of information, but you can see some of them are in color, and those are going to be the focus of my research. We have what? What are we mediating? Are we mediating language in the classroom? Are we mediating some culture concepts? Are we mediating affect, encouragement, showing interest for the students? How are we mediating? What are the strategies that we are using? Is it explicit or implicit? That would be the intention. Is it highly collaborated by students, or is it mainly the teacher doing it? When is this mediation happening? I'm interested in the process of mediation during the classroom. Where? Face-to-face classes, online? Who is mediating? Students or teachers? And for whom are they mediating? You can mediate for yourself if you don't understand a text, or even if you do understand, you can mediate it so that you are more familiar to it. Or are you mediating for others? In this case, for my research, I investigate how teachers mediate for others, for students. And that takes me to my research questions. First question is about how do teachers see themselves in this role of mediators? What are their self-perceptions, their beliefs? And my second question is about how is this mediation performed in the classroom? How does it happen in the classroom? That's why I have 3 sub-questions. It is hard to find out how this mediation process is happening. So I divided it into the focus, remember? What? Language, culture, and affect. The strategies, how are they mediating? Are they using comparisons? Are teachers using their personal experiences? What strategies are they using to come across this mediation in the classroom? And finally, how do teachers use their own background, their own intercultural experience and their own knowledge. How am I doing this? What are my methods? This is a qualitative constructionist research. I am not interested in how many times the teachers mediate, but how is this mediation? For that, I have 4 participants. They are all higher education teachers who have more than 10 years experience teaching in online and traditional modules face-to-face. What am I using to collect my data? Well, it's a very hands-on project. I did get into the classroom with 2 cameras, some audio recorder as well, and I videoed 4 sessions per teacher. This gave me an insight of actually how this mediation happens in the classroom. But this was not complete. It was not the full picture. I needed to know what the teacher were thinking when they were doing these instances of mediation. That takes me to the video stimulated recall session, which was the next step. So after I videoed the classroom, I would go into the office with the teacher and we would go through the video. We didn't necessarily see the whole 2 hours of the class, but we did select some moments that we thought were interesting to talk about. These moments were selected by myself, but they were also very encouraged to stop and comment at any time that they thought it was relevant for them. Finally, I still needed to know what were their beliefs, their perceptions, their conception as mediators. And that's why I had a final semi-structured interview with each of the 4 teachers. I was hoping to have a triangulation with all these different methods and have the whole picture of what was happening with this data. My data came to more than 44 hours, which was a very long process to transcribe, and I had to decide what was the detail of transcription required. It was also mainly in Spanish, as they were Spanish lectures, but there were some English and a small part of other languages that they were using to connect with the students. I entered all my transcriptions and data in Envivo, that's the software I've been using, and I started my thematic analysis. This is where I am at the moment. It's a work in progress, I haven't finished yet, but I am using a deductive approach. So even though I am very aware of the literature on mediation and what different types I may encounter, I tried to empty my mind and went with new eyes with this data, trying to code and see what were the emerging themes, what were the repetitive strategies that they were using, and any strategies used by them to generate mediation. That was the first unit of analysis that I found, and I was coding, recoding, and following a very specific coding system that brought me to the final themes, which I am analyzing at the moment with my findings chapter. Well, we came to the end. What are my contributions? I would very much like to develop a deeper understanding on the theoretical framework that we have for mediation nowadays. Hopefully that will lead us to understand what our teachers' beliefs on mediation, making them more aware of this process so that they can use it and they get to know what are actually the strategies that they can use, and making them aware of this wonderful tool that we have with this mediation. Finally, it would be great if I can come with a mediatory pedagogy which is supportive of linguistic, cultural, and affective mediation in language education. This is all. You have some references here and my 3 supervisors on the last slide. My contact as well. And you are now very welcome to make use of the comments below to add any suggestions, questions, or share any thoughts about my research topic. I will reply and make this online presentation as interactive as possible. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found it interesting and maybe even learn a few things about mediation with me. All the best!